Kongversation.
I realize now I should have respected Coco's feelings and moved on from her, no matter how painful it personally felt. This is an important moment in my character development.
My friends, welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell, and with me this week, I don't even know who's with me this week. I haven't even paid attention. I did no prep work for this episode.
Hi, Hyle.
Oh, hi, Jeff. Thank God. I was like, did I invite somebody? Did I actually do what I was supposed to do?
I just showed up because I was worried about you. Actually, everyone's worried about you.
Why is that, Jeff?
I don't know. You've been a little out of the, you just giving off that vibe, man. That I don't know. We always pin you as one of those guys that could just go over the edge. I'm not supposed to say that to you.
Oh, well,
anyway,
I mean,
it was my turn to check on you.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good because it makes me feel like I actually have friends, even if that's not the case, which is why I've been doing this for 19 years now, give or take a couple of years in Los Angeles. Welcome to the Kongversation, everybody. So this episode, we're going to be discussing Sea of Thieves yet again. It's a little bit of a misnomer, Jeff, that we're doing a first impressions episode because this is kind of the end of our impressions on Cursed Sails.
I was under
tradition.
I was under the first impression that we were going to be doing I thought the episode was about King K. Rool, who's in Super Smash Brothers. I thought that was.
I was wondering, could I do 3 episodes in a row about K. Rool being in Smash? Because they recently had gameplay footage of him fighting Solid Snake, I believe, and I was like, I could do an episode about that, and it would definitely get a lot of hits, a lot of attention, because people want to hear me talk about K. Rool right now. But I thought, what we cover is more than just K. Rool. We're not just K. Rool and friends. We're not just a podcast and a website about K. Rool. We cover it all. We cover, like, Donkey Kong. And so I was like, I've got to move on. So we will get back to K. Rool in Smash, and we'll probably talk a little bit about K. Rool in Smash this episode because we have no impulse control. But we need to talk about Sea of Thieves, and we need to talk about Cursed Sails. It just ended, but these are still our first impressions and our last impressions. We might have, like, nostalgic impressions 20 years down the line, who's to say? But for now, I think we need to get our first impressions out and just call it our first impressions because that's what we do here on the Kongversation. We have first impressions, Jeff. And because, 3 weeks or so of this, it's still relatively new, even though it's ended. It's a bit weird, the ephemeral kind of quality of these Sea of Thieves events. So they're first impressions, even if the event has ended. Does that make sense? Or am I just a complete fucking fraud?
Whether or not it makes sense doesn't matter because we're already doing it.
I like that attitude, Jeff. That's why I invite you on these things, because I like your attitude. People go on about spirit animals in 2018. It's a thing they go on about. And Jeff, you're not my spirit animal, but if I had to choose a human from Michigan...
It wouldn't be Tim Allen? It wouldn't be Kid Rock?
No, yeah, you're basically the best thing to come out of Michigan that I'm aware of.
Gerald R. Ford? Yeah.
I don't know, yeah.
I mean, well, what are you going to do?
Gerald Ford is basically, he was a guy who existed. He pardoned Nixon, so he's on my shit list for that. He's on my enemies list for that. But besides that, I don't have any beefs or qualms with Gerald R. Ford. But I like you better than Gerald R. Ford, Jeff.
Aw.
Yeah, I know. I
feel the love.
I don't say that to many people, that I like them better than Gerald R. Ford. In fact, you might be the first person I've ever said that to, so take that to heart.
I'm going to write about that in my diary.
Oh, yeah. Please do. And please blog about it, too. We'll get to your blogging ways in a second, but I want to talk about my stuff first. DKVine.com, to be precise. We've been around for 19 years now. August 22nd, 1999 was when we popped that cherry and we introduced DK Vine to the world. And, oh my God, over 19 years now, we just introduced our site makeover. Most people seem to like it. Some people hate it. What are you going to do? It's the internet. It's a new version of a website that people go to. People are going to hate change no matter what. We're still ironing out the kinks because Ray Davies is an asshole. And he shows up whenever you do something like this. Ray Davies shows up and he's just lazing about on a summer afternoon.
He's laying on the ironing board. The only way to get rid of him is to iron him out.
Yeah, right. So at the same time, we have a new aesthetic. They much bandied about play it loud makeover. So we've been hard at work on that. Specifically, Matt Corna has been hard at work on implementing it. We're still finding a bunch of errors because not only have we changed over to this new design that's more mobile friendly, but it's still visually like impactful on desktop computers, but we also got an SSL security certificate too, so Google won't delist us. Basically, we have a lot of wonkiness going on our site right now, but we're working overtime. That's not a Kinks reference. That's what was it? Who was the band that did that song? That
is that Bachman Turner Overdrive?
Bachman Turner Overdrive, right? So we're Bachmaning it up here on DK Vine. We're working overtime and trying to get our website immaculate. So please bear with us, but your support means the world to us on Patreon, dkvine.com/Patreon. You help make the dream possible. We're reaching towards that rainbow. So DK Vine will be the only thing I have to do for income. We're not there yet. I still have to do all sorts of side jobs. I have to debase myself many disgusting ways throughout the week to make a bank, essentially. But we're getting there.
Ironing things for the Kinks.
Ironing things for the Kinks. They haven't even been together for like 3 decades now.
It's a dirty job.
4 decades now. Whatever. Whenever the Kinks broke up, I don't know. I'm a Beatles guy. So everybody should have just broken up in 1970.
Nobody wants to do it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do it, but it's a job. Somebody's got to do it. It's got to get done.
It's got to get done, right? So anyway, but Patreon really does your funds. They go towards maintaining the site, like all the expensive domain renewals and just we need to buy this for the site to make it work. Okay, fine, we'll do it. So thank you on Patreon. Thank you to all of our patrons, both past, present, and prospectively future. Don't forget to check out DK Vine on YouTube. We have more than just conversation episodes on YouTube, but sometimes, when we're working on things like, because we're a small operation, DK Vine, we don't have manpower to really, delegate and multitask. So when things happen like, oh, we need to remake the site, have a new site design, we don't have a lot of time to then make videos too. But I try to juggle as much as I can. We've got a lot of video content coming your way for the rest of 2018. Some surprises I can't talk about yet. Some things I probably could talk about, but I don't want to because I want it to be a surprise. But that's on our YouTube channel. Also, of course, Kongversation are on there as well, as are archives of our Stream of Thieves, which we do on a semi-weekly basis. We did take the week off this last week on Mixer from doing a live Stream of Thieves because we did everything for Cursed Sales, so it was just kind of like, and they extended Cursed Sales for a week so we could kind of breathe and just like, okay, we'll just take this weekend off. But Stream of Thieves are on there, as well as original content not found anywhere else, like weird exposés about the Donkey Kong universe. So check us out. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We're at DK Vine on both. Facebook, daily updates. We've had daily updates on Facebook for over 5 years now. Original content every day. Some sort of new, just little mini write-up about the Donkey Kong universe, or fan artwork, or something. But I am very diligent about doing Facebook, as I am Twitter. I try to get a tweet off every day if I can. So check us out on both. But also check out Jeff's new Sea of Thieves blog. Jeff, you're you're venturing outside, you're doing your own thing, and I couldn't be more proud of you. Golden Sands blog post, and I have to admit, I like that name. That's a clever name. That's a name that's not clever unless you know Sea of Thieves, or blogs. But if you know both, that's a clever name. That's much more clever than DK Vine.
Yeah, well, thanks, Hyle. Yeah, so it's the Golden Sands blog post. You can find it on medium.com. And basically, up till now, for the most part, I break down every update, every patch notes, every change that comes to the game, every build dread adventure or major event like Curse Sales. I give breakdowns of the new content and walkthrough guides on how to make your way through an adventure, and occasionally editorial content or just speculatory, wish list type content of what could come to the Sea of Thieves, things like that. I think that I would consider that probably the best Sea of Thieves blog on the internet for coverage of new content. I'm the only blog that I know of that's doing weekly patch notes, breakdowns, and adventure walkthroughs. So, and I was also the first website on the internet to publish a guide to the Curse Sales. I beat IGN, all the major gaming websites. So for a walkthrough of the Curse Sales adventure, I was the first guy to do it.
I mean, to be fair, Jeff, I was the first guy on the internet to say that TT is probably going to be in Sea of Thieves, and
right,
nobody praises me. I mean,
that's not going to blow up. That's not going to blow up until it happens. Then everyone will look back and be like, "Look at this leaker who called it 6 months ago."
Yeah. Hey,
Sea of Thieves leaker.
I was right about Sakurai and how K. Rool got to be in Smash. Dave Throat was right about that. Hello, right over here. Anyway, see, K. Rool. There we go. Take a shot, everybody. We mentioned K. Rool.
The K. Rool counter.
Anyway, no, it's a great blog. Somebody who leads a go-go lifestyle. And I said I have to make other money than DK Vine, so I do moonlight as a go-go dancer. And I can't keep up with everything that happens, especially when it comes to Sea of Thieves, which changes on a weekly basis. Jeff's blog helps keep me informed. So I recommend it for you. If you're like one of these rare fans who haven't really gotten into Sea of Thieves yet, because there's this weird like bifurcation when it comes to Sea of Thieves. You're either a Sea of Thieves fan or you're a classic rare fan, and this very, very thin strip in the middle in the Venn diagram, this tiny, you almost need a microscope to see it, but that's where like a lot of people in DK Vine are, where like sites like Rare Gamer exist. But besides that, it seems like Sea of Thieves has an audience that's not classic Rare fans. So if you're a classic Rare fan that would normally tune into the Kongversation because you like Donkey Kong, because you like Banjo, because you like Conker, but you're still not like sold on Sea of Thieves, check out Golden Sands blog post on Medium, because it will give you such a concise rundown of how Sea of Thieves is evolving. So if you feel like you've waited 5 months, you can't possibly jump into it now, Jeff's blog will really kind of hold your hand and fill you in and get you up to speed. So I highly recommend it. I don't highly recommend anything. Certainly not Tim Allen or Kid Rock.
So I am the first Hyle recommendation to come from the state of Michigan.
That's right.
I wear that little pin on my pin holder.
Yeah, because I don't like putting pins on my shirt because they'll just put holes on my shirt.
Right, I just stab it right into the chest. I don't wear a shirt when I'm wearing a pin. Just take the shirt off, put the pin into my chest. It's good.
It's true. You usually don't wear a shirt in Sea of Thieves. You're usually shirtless. And I admire that about you, because I do worry about my pirate, Cousin Russell. Canonically, my pirate ancestor, the ancestor of you, and by you I mean me, the famed contestant on It's Mr. Pants, who went on to befriend many video game characters over the years. But Cousin Russell, he wears this big jacket, this big black jacket, and he's sailing around in the tropics, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna get hot. But he's also not getting sunburnt. And I worry about your pirate, Jeff, because I feel like he's going to age dramatically being in the sun the way he is without a shirt.
Well, I wonder if I don't know. I was just going to say I wonder if pirates even age in the Sea of Thieves or like how that works. But I guess probably they do. I don't know. A
Well,
little bit of lore going on there.
little bit of lore going on. I imagine, like I've been on record about my shark bite that I got during the Hungering Deep, because you can kind of garnish your pirate with scars and tattoos, and I got a shark bite scar from the Hungering Deep that I still proudly wear. But how does that work when you can die in Sea of Thieves and immediately come back through the pirate lord's machinations with the ferryman on the Ferry of the Damned? This whole rigged system of cheating death in the Sea of Thieves, and the only way I can imagine a scar would then transpire, because all your other wounds heal. Like if you get a gunshot, or you get stabbed, or you fall a great distance. I imagine if the trauma is so psychologically profound for your pirate, then your pirate will therefore wear a remnant of that on their body. That's how a pirate can theoretically like lose their leg and have to get a peg leg, or maybe lose an eye, or whatever. Or get a hook or something for a hand. If they go through an ordeal that basically makes their soul shudder, that's how they can then therefore continue to carry those scars. So theoretically, if they went through such an ordeal that they died, then maybe they wouldn't even come back, because then their soul would be like, nope, I'm done. I don't know. I'm just speculating on lore here, Jeff. But that's what I do, because I'm Hyle Russell from off DK Vine. That's my thing.
Well, speaking of, what were you going to say? You were going to say what my thing is?
I was going to say your thing is providing detailed patch notes breakdowns, and it's very helpful. My thing is, this doesn't really make sense in the context of this shared universe, but maybe if I think about it really, really hard, I can make it make sense. And then it's a thing.
Well, speaking of breaking down the lore, the Cursed Sails event, which we're supposed to talk about, that has lore.
That does have lore.
Some lore.
I did want to really touch upon, because it's kind of been a dark week for the gaming community, so I did want to just give a quick, I don't know, moment of reflection. I don't know what you want to call it. Obviously, there was the horrific shooting in Jacksonville on Sunday during the Madden tournament, and the deaths of the gamers True Boy and Spot Me Please. They I don't know what I want to say about this, Jeff. I think it's kind of like it's shaking me up in a way that I didn't really expect it to. When I first heard the news, it's just, I know there's a big gulf between what we do and the esports community, but when you really look at it, there's not. And I don't know. I don't have anything profound to say about this. I feel like all of the takes have already been given that are worth giving, and I just wanted to, like, I don't want to say thoughts and prayers, that's for goddamn sure, but I just, I don't know. My heart goes out to that community, because really,
we're all one community, really.
We're all one community,
the gaming community.
There's a lot of...
The human community.
There's a lot of toxicity that goes on in gaming, but also there's a lot of warmth and love and fellowship, and I don't know. It kind of makes me reflective when something like this happens. And this is the first time this has really happened in the gaming community, something like this, of this magnitude. So, I don't know. I felt like it would be in poor taste not to mention it, and not to say, like, everybody affected by this tragedy is definitely in our thoughts. But I have nothing really to add about it. So, just love one another. I don't know. I don't know. I'm completely empty shell of a man, Jeff. I have nothing really profound to say. So
you did it. You did all the saying you needed to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I see all of these takes about, like, these really like, oh, edgy takes about how, well, the real problem is with gaming and gamers. And I see all of these like noxious little shitheads like actually blaming the people who were murdered on Sunday. And I just a quick and hearty fuck you to everybody who's doing that. Really. So, okay. Curse sales, Jeff. The Hungering Deep was one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had as a gamer. And I mentioned that on the Kongversation episode. I think if you watch our 8-hour YouTube stream of the Hungering Deep, then, or the archive of our YouTube stream originally broadcast on Mixer, I think by the end of it, the exuberance we felt definitely illustrates that point. So, like, I was looking forward to Curse Sales, but I also didn't know what to expect with Curse Sales, because the Hungering Deep was the first major event when it came to Sea of Thieves. It was the first big content update. You know, they say free DLC update, but I think that's kind of, I don't know, a bit of a marketing spiel. I think with Sea of Thieves, it's not an MMO, but it does follow some of the tropes of an MMO, and it has these big story-driven campaigns and events that are almost a game unto themselves, because they do differ so much from the week-to-week game. And so the Hungering Deep was the first one, Curse Sales was the second, and I didn't know what to expect because it's only the second one, and we know different teams at Rare are developing these events. So it's not like the Hungering Deep necessarily will lead right into Curse Sales. This could be a completely different experience. So I was looking forward to it, but I also, you know, had some trepidation because I was like, well, what if this isn't as good? I don't know. We'll see. I wasn't expecting how involved most of my month of August would be when it came to Curse Sales. Like, the Hungering Deep was a one-day affair. It was basically, and it was a wonderful experience, and one that I'll remember until the dementia takes me. But it was basically you're in, you're out. What a great experience. It was like a wonderful night of lovemaking, whereas the Curse Sales is this weird sex cult you join that presents a never-ending orgy, and eventually you're tapped out and you just want to get out of there, but you can't because you're part of the sex cult now, Jeff. You got to keep going in, and you know, eventually, like, you're getting bruised down below, and even little minor irritations like the elastic strap on your weird Renaissance mask. That's starting to like bug you. But all in all, I mean, you still had a lot of sex, and it feels great. That's Curse Sales to me.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
No,
yeah.
I loved Curse Sales. It got a bit much, but I don't know if that's a problem or not. I can't really.
This is the way that I want to look at it. So real quick, to compare and contrast Hungering Deep with Curse Sales. Hungering Deep, if anyone who played through Hungering Deep and then dropped out of the game and hasn't come back yet, like if they haven't played Curse Sales, it's really incredible how much bigger Curse Sales is just in terms of what it adds to the game. Yeah. Hungering Deep was based around one big kind of, I guess I want to call it a boss fight, one big battle against the Hungering one, and in addition to that being the main centerpiece, it added a couple other little new gameplay quirks. It added the drum set, you can play a new instrument, added the speaking trumpet, which has really changed the way you interact with other ships. You can speak to them at a distance. But in all, it's a pretty small-ish amount of content, but was built into a short but very compelling little package, like campaign. Curse Sales dials that up to 11. It's just in terms of stuff, and really the reason is that Curse Sales and Hungering Deep, and then the upcoming Forsaken Shores, They all began development at the exact same time, about 3 weeks after the game launched. That's when Rare split into 3 different content development teams, each working on an update that was going to be staggered out. So Hungry Deep had about 7 weeks of dev time, but Curse Sales ended up being more like 16 or 15 or 16 weeks of development time. So twice as much time to go into it as Hungry Deep. They added the Brigantine Ship, which is an entire new ship type that is optimized for 3 players at a time. And that takes a considerable amount of effort to add a new ship type to the game. They added the Alliance system. Yeah. And the Alliance system, we'll talk about that. Added the Skeleton AI ships, which is the main sort of the equivalent of the Hungering one. This is this event's kind of boss fight, or this event's main challenge. And so the amount of content is exponentially more than Hungering Deep. But I think that the structure of the content is also based a lot around feedback from Hungering Deep. So I think the number one complaint with the Hungering Deep was that it was not very repeatable. Like you said, it was a one-day affair. And there was no reward for doing it other than you got a cosmetic award, you got the exclusive figurehead. But if you wanted to repeat it again, which I beat the Hungering one 3 times because I had different groups of friends that wanted to play it and do it with me. But the second and the third time I did it, there was no reason for me to do it. Right. There was no reward. It was still pretty fun, but it also got harder and harder to do it as the time went on, because you needed to find other players. That was the main thing about the Hungering one, or the Hungering Deep, is that it required you to team up with another crew in order to summon this Megalodon, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you watch our YouTube stream, you'll see that, because we did it the last weekend, I believe, that it was an active event. That's when we streamed it, just because that's timing wise, that's when we could do it, because it was right before E3. So of course, there was a lot going on at that time, but because it was the last weekend, we kept encountering griefers. People who would stake out Shark Bay Cove or the actual coordinates near where the Hungering one would spawn, and they would just be there to basically ruin it for you, because they've already done it and it was funny to them. And your basic Heath Ledger Joker from Off of the Dark Knight kind of antics, just want to watch the world burn. Now, to be fair, one of our griefers that day later became a follower of us on Twitter, and I love them now. But at the time, go back and my Sea of Thieves litmus test, my Sea of Thieves chart for how well things are going are to, because we usually sail with Cameron on Stream of Thieves, and my litmus test is, what is Cameron's mood? Because when things are going bad, Cameron will go to a dark place. Cameron, this really affable, easygoing guy, will just turn into the most soured, bitter, cynical guy. And so when Cameron is cursing or is just almost non-responsive, things are going bad. So watch the middle of that Stream of Thieves episode on YouTube for the Hungering Deep, because you'll see Cameron probably at his darkest. But it was unfortunate that there was no camaraderie or honor among thieves, if you will, when it came to the Hungering Deep. Once people got it done, they had no incentive to do it again, and no in-game reward incentive to do it again, other than, these guys need their help. And I'm the kind of pirate who, if a pirate needs help, if a pirate crew needs help, I will generally try to help them, unless they're being dicks to us. That's not how most people play the game, especially back in May. That's because there wasn't any reason to. So you would get that, and it was unfortunate. It made overcoming that adversity all the more sweet. But at the end of the day, that 8-hour stream could have been a 4-hour stream, or even a 2.5-hour stream had things gone differently, or we just done it earlier in the event. So yeah, they definitely needed to take a good hard look at how do we make the reward aspect stronger for those who've already done this.
Yeah, and so they talked a lot about Hungering Deep at E3 and some of their analytics and stuff. They said one of the main things that Joe Neate, executive producer, liked to point out was in that first week of the Hungering Deep, they looked at ship-to-ship encounters and said that they resulted in combat 50% less often, meaning that in general, that first week of Hungering Deep, they made the Sea of Thieves was 50% friendlier, just because there was an objective that required crews to organize and cooperate with another crew in order to complete this objective. Now, like you said, once it got to the second week of that event and the majority of players had finished it, the camaraderie ended. The friendliness ended. And since then, before Cursed Sails started, they had instituted a system with the Bilge-Rat adventures, the Bilge-Rat sort of company, and the doubloons and the commendations. That system they introduced over the summer was a way to turn an event, a temporary event-based objective or list of objectives, and make it repeatable with rewards. So it's like, okay, you have to do this objective, you do it, you're going to earn some doubloons, but then there's this legendary tier objective that says, if you do that, it says do the objective like 20 times or whatever. That way, anybody who jumps into the Sea of Thieves in that 2-week period, if they play one day in 2 weeks, they're going to get the base objectives down, or try to at least. If they play every day for 2 weeks, they're still going to have stuff to do. So they don't get bored, and they don't just start resorting to griefing other players that are trying to get those objectives done. That system is like really improved on kind of the formula that they started with Hungering Deep. And it really comes to a head in like the perfect culmination, I think, with the Cursed Sails, the way their commendations are laid out, and then all of that combined with the addition of the alliance system, which sort of formalized this benefit, an in-game benefit to teaming up outside of just completing the objectives, the commendations.
Yes, and I would argue that it took a while over the course of all the Bilge-Rat adventures over the summer post E3, because I believe the first one, Skeleton Throne, started the week of E3. But I would argue that it took a while for them to get the perfect balance for those. I remember Gunpowder Skeletons, the legendary commendations were a bit much to achieve. And then they kind of scaled them back with the Drowned Curse. But I think Cursed Sails was really where they found that perfect balance of this is reasonable, but it'll also keep you playing. Like it doesn't rely on all sorts of absurd criteria or just doing the same thing again and again and again and again, assuming you have all the time in the world. Because, yeah, it's great that you have these legendary commendations, but the thing is, if you're OCD, like, say, I am, and a lot of the people I play with are, you're going to want to do those legendary commendations, even if you don't have the time to necessarily do them. If you're a busy adult with a Donkey Kong website, it's kind of hard. So... but I think Cursed Sails is the first time I really felt like this is all doable and it's perfectly achievable and it's fun throughout and I'm enjoying myself. Despite my orgy analogy, my sex cult analogy earlier, I really did have fun with Cursed Sails from beginning to end. It's just, by the end of the third week, I think I was ready to move on from it. But the experience was always enjoyable when I was playing it. It wasn't like...
So let's break it down a little for anyone who's listening and maybe didn't play Curse Sales.
Sure.
The way it was laid out is, and we'll talk about the story behind it, I think, next, after, or whatever. But regardless of the story, there's these AI skeleton ships have been added into the world, which just alone are a really cool addition, because the game has some really refined, pretty great, I think, PvP mechanics. They're combat mechanics, ship to ship combat. Your cannon fire, your maneuvering your ship to get angles for your cannons to fire. You've got your gunpowder barrels for blowing things up, and all these tools at your disposal for combat. But not all players are really interested in combat, specifically because of the social element of fighting another player who might say toxic things on the microphone. They might try to, be a dickhead. I don't know. I don't shy away from it, but I know that some players don't play Sea of Thieves for the combat because they don't want to have a negative social interaction with another person or a group of people.
Right.
What the AI ships add, I think, is great is the fact that you can get involved in some ship-to-ship combat against AI opponents, against skeleton ships, and they're epic, they're exciting, and they're fun, and they're challenging, all of those things, and they're very rewarding. So they've added these AI ships, and the way they broke down the event is the AI ships are sort of waging war on each of the 3 regions of the world, and so throughout a 24-hour period, there are these time windows where every 4 hours, the AI ships are waging war in a different region around the world, kind of on a rotation. I think counterclockwise. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so they're on this rotation, and you come into the game. You're at the Outpost. You've got this ominous, foreboding skeleton banner, and it tells you, the skeletons are throwing down. They've challenged us to a war, to a battle, and they are waiting for you out in this area of the map from this time window, from this time to this time. If you sail out there, they burst from the sea and start. You start a battle. You've got to finish them off, and you fight waves and waves of these ships. Usually, somewhere between 7 and 10 total ships you've got to take out. Each one having some treasure. The final wave with the captain spawning the greatest amount of treasure, and if you beat them all, you're going to earn some commendations. The commendations are basically like the objectives that the game sets out for you over the course of the whole event, which was a 3-week event, which got expanded to be a 4-week event. And the main commendations break down like this. If you win one battle in each of the 3 regions, you're going to get a title, Conqueror of the Skeleton Fleets. You're going to get a bunch of doubloons, and you're going to gain access to this event's exclusive cosmetic rewards, which are the Bone Crusher ship livery set. And Rare considers that to be sort of the main base amount of engagement that your average player would strive for. Just win one battle in each of the 3 regions, and you have 3 weeks to do that. Seems very reasonable. A battle, if you don't fail, if you find some allies and you don't fail to win, it only takes about 2 hours. So really, the whole event could be done in 6 hours if you were just doing that base amount of stuff. That would also earn you the exclusive scar and tattoo set. And Rare considers that all those exclusive cosmetics, those are the main bulk of the event. But like you said, we were engaged a lot more than that because they added in all these extra commendations for the players who don't want to play it once a week for 3 weeks, but they want to play it every day, or they want to play it, multiple sessions a week, or they want to play one 8 hour long session a week or whatever, which is what we did. And so what they've done is they added these commendations for if you win a battle in each of the 3 regions, each of the 3 weeks, you're going to get commendations. And each of those battles is not just repeating the same thing over and over, but every region, every week was a slightly different crew you were facing. That was a big, I think for some players that was overwhelming. For other players that was exciting. But that was the main kind of gimmick here, is that every region had a different crew every week.
Well, here's the thing I appreciated about this from somebody who really does care about lore and story and kind of world building was Hungering Deep. As a gamer who cares about that stuff, I would only want to play it once because there's only one Hungering one. There's only like one time you would logically face them. Yes, there are other Megalodons that rise up after the fact in the game world, but they're the main Megalodon, the biggest, the fiercest, the meanest, that was the Hungering one. So done in one, basically. But these other battles, different crew of skellies every time, for a total of 9 crews that you would face over 3, ultimately 4, but we'll just say the original intent was 3 weeks. And each one utilizes a different cursed cannonball set. So each battle is fundamentally different because each battle would have to have different strategy. Each battle would have different consequences. And so it wasn't just you're repeating the same battle in, say, the Wilds 3 times. It's, no, this is the battle against this Skelly crew with this cursed cannonball. It's going to have this effect on you. Plan accordingly. And so it really never felt like the same battle again and again and again. So from that viewpoint, it wasn't just grinding to get these legendary commendations. It was a new experience, a new experience, a new experience. And because of that, the whole event felt so much more packed and large and just, I don't know, robust than the Hungering Deep did, which again could be done in one afternoon.
Right. Yeah, the way they built it is kind of like I said, I kind of liken it to winning a boss fight, sort of. And Forsaken Shores, which comes later, it will be interesting because it will be presumably the first major event that is not based around a fight or a boss, so to speak. But anyway, Hungering Deep, the whole event lasted 2 weeks, but it was really like beat the boss, quote unquote, once, win this battle once. And players complained that there wasn't enough reason to repeat it for those players that are playing every day or maybe 3 times a week or whatever. So Cursales says, well, here's your boss fight. And if you really want to get all the cosmetics, instead of getting one figurehead for beating the Hungering one once, instead you can get a full ship livery set, but you've got to beat this boss 3 times, once per week, like minimum. That's how you're going to get all the cosmetics that you can get for this event. But if you want to do it even more than that, in reality, there's going to be 9 total boss fights you can fight, 3 per week, and all 9 of them are a little different. And they're all like you said, a little more different strategy. They're gonna have a different type of interaction, and that is exciting. And I think that some players were overwhelmed by that, like you said, with the OCD element, or if we just want to be more general, just there's a compulsion in everybody, even if you're not OCD, that when there are challenges presented to you, especially if they're time limited and they're going away at the end of the event, you want to complete those challenges. You want to tick off those check marks, check off those boxes. And I think that is where the event breaks down for some players. If you didn't have time to play 3 boss battles a week, which I would say probably a sizable percentage of Sea of Thieves players don't have that much time to put into it, they feel left out. And I think that I sympathize with that. But on the other hand, I do like that Rare structured it in a way that all of the reward that you get for doing all these extra battles are purely gold and reputation based. You can earn more doubloons, and what do doubloons get you but more gold or reputation? You can earn more treasure by beating these battles, but what does treasure get you but gold and reputation? But the main reward of an event, the main draw, the main limited time reward, because gold and reputation is not limited time. Even though doubloons are limited time, in reality, they're not, because you can get gold and reputation anytime you want by other means. But what is limited is cosmetics, the ship livery set, the Bone Crusher set, the Bone Crusher scar and tattoo set. Those things are what Rare considers the main reward for doing this event. And those you only needed to beat the boss once a week for 3 weeks. And you had 4 weeks to do it, actually. So you have to beat a boss 3 total times, anytime you want, in 4 weeks. And if you can get that done, that is going to get you all the cosmetics. I think it was structured perfectly for that. I think that the players who feel this overwhelming compulsion to finish every doubloon, but they then complain because they don't have 9 hours to put into a game a week, well, then those commendations aren't built for you. They're built for the players, because there are players who are playing this game 9 hours a day, and then Rare wants to cater to those players, but they want to cater to the players who only play once a week. So I think that they've structured it well to kind of please everybody. Once those players do come around and realize, well, I'm limited by how much time I can put into it, and that just means I have to let go of some of those doubloons. At least I got the cosmetics. At least I got this and that, the time-limited cosmetics. But, once those players rewire their minds to let some of those extra stuff go, and say, well, I don't play the game 9 hours a week, so I can't earn this other stuff, I think they'll be happier when they do that.
I sympathize with those players, but ultimately there's not a lot you can do, because, Rare could just say, okay, the entire summer is cursed sales, but then they can't really move on and keep adding game content or new events, and Sea of Thieves becomes a stagnant experience. So ultimately, it's just, I think a big problem is, as somebody who's been a Rare fan since 1994, is there's never been a game like Sea of Thieves, really, where things are evolving at a very fluid and rapid state. So you kind of have to just adapt or die, essentially. And like you said, let some things go. If you're a completionist, well, this is not a game necessarily designed around completionism. So you have to take your victories as Rare intended and not get so hung up on the cold hard stats. So,
yeah, and real quick, one thing I think we could talk about is the fact that, yeah, the event is time limited. Those commendations are time limited. Some of those rewards are time limited. And it's kind of the focus of the game right now. Win these ship battles. But once that's over and they move on to something else, and the same happened with Hungering Deep, the stuff that they've added in is then going to become worked back into the game forever. It's not like, it's not like they're making very throwaway content that's not going to evolve the game permanently. It's just temporary. Like the Hungering one, the Hungering Deep, the speaking trumpet became a permanent change to the way you interact with other ships, a new tool you have. The Hungering one, the Megalodons, became a new roaming emergent threat that, instead of being this sort of one and done boss fight. Now they're a little bit nerfed, but they're more common, and they just kind of are a wild card. They show up unexpectedly, and they can attack you, or they can ignore you, or they can just wait for something to happen and then attack or whatever. And the same thing is going to happen with Cursed Sails. So for players who missed out on Cursed Sails, if you're listening to this and you didn't play it, all of the work they put into it is going to translate into permanent evolutions of the day-to-day gameplay. The Brigantine Ship is obviously just a massive change to the balance of the ships you encounter on the sea and the ships you have at your disposal. If you want to play on a 3-player ship, you can do that now. The alliance system is huge. I think that already has, but it's going to continue to completely change the array of social interactions on the seas and tip the balance of when I see another ship, how often does it result in a negative griefing experience or a fight that maybe I want or maybe I don't want, or how often is it going to end with the opportunity for friendly social interaction and cooperation. And you want a range of those different experiences to be possible, but I think the alliance system is going to tip that balance towards a little bit more towards us having a reason and motivation for cooperating with the players we meet on the seas. And I think that's some of the most fun you ever have in Sea of Thieves is once you get a group of 2 or 3 ships all sailing together that are all friendly. I remember we did that Skeleton Thrones event. We had 3 full-size galleons sailing, from location to location around the map, firing ourselves out of cannons to land in the thrones. And it's just, and then everyone's getting drunk and playing instruments together. That is the most fun you can have in Sea of Thieves, is once you get a group of bunch of strangers with you and you're all just having a fun time. And the alliance system facilitates that.
Yeah. I was initially skeptical from the time of the Hungering Deep when I heard that the Megalodons would then be added to the game after the fact, because I thought, well, hold on, that just makes what we just went through with the Hungering Deep so much less special if Megalodons are just going to become drone enemies throughout the game rather than just this special, unique snowflake of an experience where I got to fight the Megalodon. I was part of the Hungering Deep. And then it's just, but you can just encounter them at any point now. They're essentially a more common version of the Kraken. And I was wrong. I was completely wrong. The Megalodons have added so much more to the experience of sailing that and it doesn't detract from fighting the Hungering One. The Hungering One was a unique, special experience. So I was wrong there. And with that knowledge now in mind, and I look at what everything is getting added to from Cursed Sails, and I'm my mouth is watering because this really does make the game a much more robust experience. And let's talk about these individually point by point, because it's not just you've got skeleton crews now or you've got cursed cannonballs now. You've got an alliance system, you've got the Brigantine, and the Hungering Deep added the speaking trumpet and it added the drum, which are great. The drum is now my go-to instrument. The speaking trumpet is a great source of communication as well as tomfoolery. But neither one is exactly as profound as the alliance system. So let's get into that. The alliance system is basically what we dreamed about back when Sea of Thieves was first announced, and then further into that early development cycle when we dreamed of a DK Vine armada or fleet taking on the seas together. And it's not exactly that, because you can't get 20 of your friends on one server as the plan. There's still a great deal of coordination and machination that has to be put into the game if you want to pull that off, because you're going to be randomly placed on a server with your crew, and that's it. But what the alliance system does is it definitely changes the interactions you have with these strangers out on the seas, because all of a sudden now they don't necessarily have a reason to just blast the crap out of you and see if you have any treasure on board. Now there's a kind of a tit for tat, quid pro quo aspect to Sea of Thieves, where why not just strike up an alliance? Why not just share in each other's rewards? Because it doesn't detract anything. It doesn't take away from the treasure you're necessarily finding. If this other crew is going to get some, like, half of what you get, it doesn't take away from the actual share of your own bounty. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. Jeff, explain to them what the alliance system actually is and does.
So basically, the alliance system is very simple. Up on the top of your crow's nest, up in your mast, you can raise an alliance pennant, which is like a pennant is just like a triangular flag. And it's actually really, from a gameplay design perspective, it's smart that they made all the alliance-based flags different shape than the regular flags, because they can be seen from a distance and immediately identified as something different. So now I think the flag system, which was introduced in Hungering Deep, that had kind of this idea behind it that you would use the flags to communicate intention, and it never really took off because they didn't really identify what was the intended meaning of all the flags, and also the flags can't be seen from that far of a distance. Most of the time you see a ship, it's in silhouette from a distance. So anyway, the alliance system, you put up this flag that says, I'm offering to join an alliance or to form an alliance. And it's this triangular flag that is different than the normal flags, and it can be seen from a distance just because of the shape of it. And if I see a ship that has that, I sail towards them and I put up a different pennant that says, join the alliance. So somebody makes the offer, somebody else says, sure, I'll join on your offer. And then boom, we all get a UI pop-up that says, the alliance has been formed, and it even has a name. There's 7 different alliances you can be part of. They're named and color coded. You could be the powder monkeys or the landlubbers. I don't remember the names, but they all have like a catchy name to them.
The skin flints.
The skin flints. That's our go-to. I mean, you don't choose what you get; it's randomly assigned. But it is, once you're in that alliance, 2 interesting things happen. One, on my map table, which usually shows me a map of the world and where my ship is on the map, I also now can see my ally's ship on that map with a little note, with a little flag next to it to show that's one of my allies. And you can see by the shape of the ship what type of ship it is. You can just by the picture, the icon of it, like, okay, that's a sloop, that's a galleon, that's a brigantine. And they're in my alliance, and anywhere they sail on the map, you can see where they're at. So if I'm with an ally and we're in a battle and I get sunk, or I can look at my map, I can see where they're at, they can see where I'm at, they could come to me, I can come to them, we can group up, whatever. That's the one cool feature. You can see each other on the map. But more importantly than that is you share in each other's rewards. And I get the feeling that this will be tweaked and balanced, and the exact definition of this will change over time, but as of now, as of the Curse Sales event, whenever I sell treasure, I will always get 100% of my spoils. But just by being in the alliance, every other crew in my alliance gets 50% of the spoils that I turn in, and vice versa. If my ally goes and finds a treasure chest and they sell it, they're going to get the full value of what they would have gotten either way, but I am going to get 50% of that just by being their ally. And so they've done these events before. They've done Hungering Deep, Skeleton Thrones, and Gunpowder Skeletons. Those 3 so far all had built into their challenge a requirement to cooperate with another crew. But this is the first thing they've added to the game that encourages that cooperation regardless of whatever the weekly objectives are, regardless of having a specific challenge that requires it. This is the first motivator they've ever put in that said, even if you're just doing regular voyages, you guys should team up because you're going to benefit off of each other's work and spoils. And, you guys can sail together. You can get stuff done twice as quickly and all share the treasure, or you can go do a fort together. And now a fort doesn't necessarily have to be a PvP free-for-all. A fort can be a cooperative experience. And especially as it relates to the events like the Cursed Sails, which the Cursed Sails had a couple commendations that required you to be in an alliance. But for the most part, you were encouraged to be in an alliance just because alliances made it easier and more doable and more fun. So they've kind of moved away from just you're required to work with somebody else and more moved into organic motivators to work with each other. The alliance system organically motivates cooperation. The Cursed Sails event is just such a difficult and large-scale challenge that it organically motivates you to work with another crew to get it done. And anyway, that's going to change the game moving forward because, like I said, we had that Hungering Deep, Skeleton Thrones, Gunpowder Skeletons. Those all required you to team up, but they didn't necessarily facilitate it very easily. Finding a crew that wants to cooperate, teaming up. The alliance system improved that for the Cursed Sails, and it will improve that for every event going forward. Anytime they want to do something that facilitates cooperation, they have the alliance system in the backdrop that's just going to make it easier. Going to give you, you can see that triangular flag from a distance. You can, you've got that built-in motivator that says, every time I see another crew, I might want to fight them or they might want to fight me, or there's pretty good chance we both just want to be allies and join into a fleet, an armada of ships that are tackling this task together or separately.
Yeah, and one aspect of Cursed Sails that the Hungering Deep did not have was you're getting a large share of treasure, just regular treasure, from sinking these skelly ships, especially the captain ship. So it's essentially the equivalent of a fort battle, minus the special commendations and the time limited hardware you can get from all of this. But there's also the chest and merchant goods that bubble up from the ocean after you sink the captain ship. That it's the equivalent of taking on a skelly fort. So therefore, the alliances have a reason to do these battles, even if they've already gotten all the commendations, and that's a prime motivating factor. Where with the Hungering Deep, there was no monetary gain from any of it.
Right. Well, and then the Hungering one, or the Megalodons, they became an emergent threat in the world, like you said. And I think they're great. They pop up while you're sailing. They add in a little bit of a wild card, especially once you get into a battle. You get multiple ships in an area. The Megalodon is more likely to show up. But players have complained that if they get attacked by a Kraken or they get attacked by a Megalodon, there is no motivation to fight back. Your number one motivation is just escape, because escaping is faster and easier and it doesn't use up your supplies as much as fighting. There's no reward for killing and defeating a Megalodon. But the skeleton AI ships, once those get added back into the world after this event, they're going to become a threat in the world, just like happened with Hungering Deep. But they're going to have that monetary reward. If you see one, you're going to want to sink it because it's going to have treasure. And they also said, like you just likened it to a fort battle. They said that they actually are going to remain in the world as occasional randomly spawned battles with a cloud over top, just like a skeleton fort has. A new type of cloud will denote that there's a skeleton ship naval battle taking place over in that corner of the world. So, they're basically just going to become an alternative to the fort battles. And I think it's a great alternative because the fort battles are a little bit formulaic. They're a little bit boring and kind of going through the motions because the on land combat between skeletons and pirates is a little bit bland. But naval combat is exciting. Naval combat is really intense against these skeleton ships, and I think that having that cloud in the sky, it says there's an AI ship battle taking place, is going to be one of the main uses of the alliance system. This is going to be the only real challenge that I can think of that's in the game right now. The only challenge that really requires or begs for alliances. Like a fort battle can be done solo, voyaging can be done solo, but these skeleton ship battles, they can be really big epic affairs, and you're more likely to succeed if you have allies.
Yeah, and you mentioned how much more exciting they were, and I would have to agree. Well, one aspect though that I appreciate with the naval skelly battles over the fort battles is the fort battles, they almost attracted like a moth to a flame certain types of players who not always, but usually they were more, I guess, aggressive and more into the PvP battles and less forgiving. I guess there was certain a hyper I guess testosterone fueled kind of perspective towards playing Sea of Thieves when it came to the Skelly forts. With the Skelly ship battles, they can just pop up anywhere, so you can kind of just get roped into one without necessarily seeking them out. So it's going to attract or ensnare different types of gamers rather than ones you would usually encounter on a Skelly fort, which is honestly why I normally avoid Skelly forts altogether.
Yeah, I think it's going to be having. I think that when you've got a pirate game and you've got a pirate ship and you've got cannons and all these gameplay features that are specifically for combat, it really begs this scenario, this dream scenario of this large scale naval battle, right? And in before Cursed Sails, you really never saw that. I've had maybe 2 naval battles the whole time I've been playing that involved more than 2 ships. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very rarely do you get 3 ships in the same area all exchanging cannon fire. And the dev team was at one point very adamant. Mike Chapman, very adamant that in all of the future of Sea of Thieves, you would never see a ship on the horizon that wasn't another player. They didn't want to add AI ships. And they ended up going back on that idea and making the AI ships based on feedback because they agreed that it would be a fun addition to the game. And I'm glad they did, because now we actually are getting these large-scale naval battles. You get out in an AI ship battle and you've got 2 allies. That's 3 ships. And then you spawn in 2 AI ships. It's 5 ships exchanging fire. Suddenly the Megalodon pops up and starts biting your ship or the AI ship indiscriminately. Total wild card. And it's just chaos, and it's exciting, and it's exactly what you dreamed the Sea of Thieves game could become, but never really lived up to yet. And I think that you can't have a pirate game without these large-scale naval battles. That's the draw. That's one of the dream scenarios. And you want those sessions that are going to be calm and just, you're on your own doing voyages and digging up treasure, but you also want to have the opportunity for these massive exchanging of cannon fire and blowing up the gunpowder in their hull and all this good stuff and making them crash into rocks. And, naval combat is way more exciting than ground combat on the skeleton forts. And anyway, I think it's an excellent addition. And then the fact that the alliance system is there means that even though we are sinking all these ships and collecting large sums of treasure, there's always that little worry that someone might betray each other, but it's not obvious. It's not like every single battle is going to end in a betrayal because there's treasure at stake. That's no longer the way the game works, because just because there's treasure at stake doesn't mean there's going to be a betrayal, because we can share in the treasure. And that's a huge addition with the alliance system.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's only like a couple of times we did all 9 battles in Cursed Sails where I really thought, oh, these people are going to screw us. But it was never really a worry, and the alliance system really did create this kind of security blanket where, okay, even if they do screw us, we stay in the alliance, it's fine. Or we'll just let them have it all. We're still going to get half of it, and that's still a sizable haul, so whatever. And honestly, I am glad that Mike Chapman and the others went back on the notion that you're only ever going to see player ships, and there's never going to be any AI vessels out there, because I understand where they were coming from, absolutely. And it's a grand romantic notion that any other ships you encounter out on the sea are going to be other human-controlled players. But sometimes we just need a little bit of a push. Sometimes we can't be expected to generate the same type of drama that a programmed AI enemy could facilitate. And you're right, it absolutely does bring that promise home to us finally of having these large ship-to-ship-to-ship-to-ship battles that really weren't present before this, because you would have to have very specific circumstances, and that's not even getting into the fact that on any given server you might be the only galleon, everybody else might be sloops, or you might be on a sloop and there might be a galleon, but the equivalency wasn't exactly there, which is something that the Brigantine also helps balance out. So let's talk a little bit quickly about the Brigantine. I don't have a lot to say about this. This is the mid-tier vessel, the midway point between the galleon, which is optimized for 4 players, and the sloop, which is optimized for 2. But you can have 3 people on a galleon, you can have 1 person on a sloop. The Brigantine is designed for 3 players, and it's kind of the best of both worlds, but without necessarily the benefits, the high tier benefits of either the galleon or the sloop. It's basically one long. Chad likened it to Twitter as a bowling alley, and I can't get that out of my head now. It's a big bowling alley of a ship.
Yeah, I'm more excited about the Brigantine than your average player, and that's because every week since launch, I have played a session of Sea of Thieves in real life, kind of like a LAN setup, LAN party, or I guess it would be a sea party because Sea of Thieves. Anyway, I play this with a couple of friends of mine who live in town, and
Kid Rock, Tim Allen, and Gerald Ford.
No, actually, Gerald Ford died, so it's just the 3 of us. So, the point I'm getting at is there's just Hyle. We can talk about this later. No, he's alive. He's alive. Gerald Ford would never die.
You were joking. You were joking.
It's a sick joke.
God, what's wrong with you?
Gerald Ford would never leave you. Not like this. Anyway, but there's only 3 of us, and from launch until now, until Cursed Sails, we had to play on a galleon, and like you said, the galleon allows 3 players, but it's not optimized for 3 players. It's optimized for 4, and you've got 3 players. Somebody's got to steer the ship. You've got 3 masts that all need to be adjusted. You've got an anchor that takes forever to raise and is faster with more players. You've got a lot of ship surface area that can take hits and need to be patched. You have a long way to walk from the top deck all the way to the bottom hull if you want to bail water. All of these things make the galleon a very cumbersome ship that is optimized for having more hands on deck for managing it for 4 players. And man, there were days when we just felt complete there. We a lot of times we made the 3-player thing work, but there were days when we felt totally disheartened at failing, you know, a PvP battle because we were just outnumbered on a ship that is meant to have more players on board. That is the reason why the Brigantine really changes the game for me personally and my group of friends. So now, if you join in the game and you put out a feeler message out there like, "Hey, anybody want to play?" and you get 2 responses, you don't have to feel like, "Ah, man, I only got 2 responses. I don't want to play on a galleon. Like, this is going to be tough." Instead, you can be like, "Oh, there's 3 of us. Let's jump in on the 3-player ship," and it's perfectly optimized. It's perfectly balanced in between the sloop and galleon. When I talk about turning radius, speed, acceleration, speed into the wind, speed against the wind, the amount of it's got 2 sails to adjust. It's got 2 cannons on each side of the ship. All this stuff, it's just exactly in between the sloop and the galleon, and it just could not have done a better job with it, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm somebody who will always prefer the galleon and always prefer the 4-person crew, partially because that's how Sea of Thieves was introduced to me, and partially because I feel, I don't know, I feel like my gameplay style in Sea of Thieves, whatever that might be, is more in tune with galleon style gameplay than when you start paring that down. I feel maybe the stress starts getting to me. I don't know, but I like the Brigantine. I'm glad it's there. It's a nice stopgap between the two. It honestly should have been there from the start, probably, but I'm not going to fault them for that, because a lot of Sea of Thieves is based on feedback, trial and error, and just the natural evolution of that. So I'm glad they listened to the gamers who desperately wanted a Brigantine, because it is a big get to get 3 people to play with you on any given session. I have the luxury of heading up a big rare fan site, so it's never that insurmountable to find 3 people on a given week, especially since I usually play only once a week. So, whatever, but this definitely makes it more reasonable, and less of a deal breaker if you can get that full galleon crew. I'd certainly prefer this over a sloop. I always feel like a sloop is way too precarious for how I like to play Sea of Thieves. Even if I'm with another person, it just always feels like we're outgunned, we're outmanned, we're screwed no matter where we go. The Brigantine has that extra level of security, and it's not as tough or resilient as a galleon, but it can outmaneuver a galleon. So you just have to kind of change up your style a little bit to make it work for you. Yeah, absolutely glad it's there.
Yeah, the more options, the better, and that's what these content updates add in a new tool, whether it's a small tool like the speaking trumpet or a large tool like the 3-player ship. They're permanent changes to the game. It's just a quality of life thing. Now we have the option to play as 3 players on a ship that's optimized for 3 players. That option wasn't there before. Now it is, and it's never going away. It's just the game consistently is making these small and big changes that are adding up to a much more viable and enjoyable experience overall. All these options available to us, all of these just little improvements and little new tools and things. That's what I really love about their content delivery format, where they've split into these multiple dev teams that are staggering their development cycles. Just a constant drip feed, and you get the major stuff like an AI skeleton ship battle, but even the stuff that goes under the radar like the Brigantine, that stuff adds up. And in the amount of time since release, it's really started to add up. So do you want to talk now? How about the story component, the story campaign that went with it?
Yes, yes. This isn't just we're introducing all this stuff, and here's some skeleton battles you have to do. Cursed Sails, as with the Hungering Deep, there is a story campaign and almost a detective story that you have to participate in order to engage in the actual event. And the thing that I've really noticed, I noticed a little bit with the Hungering Deep, but it really like made itself abundantly clear with Cursed Sails, is that they have to design these things so it's not necessarily disruptive to the gamers who just don't care, who just want to level up their pirate, who are working towards legend status, who are, you know, just want to do merchant quest or gold hoarders, or Order of Souls. Although if you're going to do Order of Souls, I don't know why you wouldn't want to do this, but they can't just completely upend the game world for the better part of a month and make the rest of the stuff inaccessible. So all of this stuff, the story, you're going to encounter it. You can't help but stumble across the altered aspects of the game, but you almost have to go out of your way to the margins of the game, literally to the margins of the game when it comes to the ultimate end goal battles. But you kind of have to try to do this. You can't just stumble across it accidentally or achieve anything by mistake. And I like that, although I am looking forward to Forsaken Shores, where there's going to be this big change to the game world that you can't help but notice. Yeah, this is arranged. The Cursed Sails story campaign was arranged basically like a detective story, a little bit like Hungering Deep, although even more so. And they did a good job of slowly building up to this in the weeks prior to Cursed Sails. When Hungering Deep was starting up, I think the biggest thing was shark attacks were increasing. With this, the big thing was on Golden Sands Outpost. And this is where the clues towards the upcoming, let's call it hinkiness. No reference intended to John Hinckley Jr. I'm already mourning Gerald R. Ford because I just looked it up on Wikipedia, Jeff. Apparently he is dead. I don't need to worry about Reagan getting assassinated too. But
Hyle, I have bad news to tell you about Reagan.
What's that?
Reagan is dead.
Did he choke on jelly beans? Because I don't think I could take that, Jeff. I don't think I could ever eat a jelly bean the same way.
He wandered confusedly onto a construction site and knocked down a wall, but it fell on him.
Oh, that's fine. I can at least imagine that was the arcade Donkey Kong then, and I would hear you would have the sound effects as he perished. Golden Sands Outpost was where the story started to be laid down a couple weeks prior. And this is where things like your blog definitely come in handy, Jeff, because I would probably miss most of this stuff if I didn't have people cluing me in about it. So it was with Wanda, the weapons smith, the blacksmith of Golden Sands Outpost, that you'd start noticing things were askew. It started like very, very innocently, where I believe she was like hiding her arm one week. Like you didn't like know necessarily what she was trying to keep from you. And if you like looked in her shop from the outside without actually walking in, you noticed like she was staring at it a bit. And I remember that like led to all sorts of theories, because we're kind of bracing ourselves a bit for the potential some sort of element with the mermaids in the game, some sort of like digging deeper into what makes a mermaid a mermaid. Is there some sort of mermaid curse or something that turns you into a fish person? So a lot of us were just thinking, oh, is she turning into a fish person? Not the case. Not the case at all. She was actually turning into, very slowly, a skelly. But the reasons behind that actually are baked in a bit to the Tales from the Sea of Thieves ledger that you can buy in bookstores, which detailed how Flameheart became the skelly he became, and it actually ties into Flameheart a bit as well.
Right. Yeah. I found it really interesting how, and this was several weeks before Curse Sales started, is when they started peppering in these references. This was actually, I think, the first sort of tease that they put in with Wanda was probably at least 3 weeks before the Curse Sales started, maybe 4. Somewhere around or just before the Sunken Curse event happened. But anyway, they started peppering in these things, and then they brought back Salty, Salty was the shopkeeper in the alpha, never made it into the final build of the game, and then he came back into the game world, and they're just peppering in these little, every week the story updated a little bit, but it didn't tell you what was going on. It just sort of teased it. And then when the event finally started, Wanda is nowhere to be found. Her sister is manning the shop. Salty is turned into this cursed skeletal parrot, and we don't know how that happened. And all of a sudden, an armada or just this group of skeleton AI ships have shown up at each outpost and pounded in these stakes and declared war on the outposts. And all of the shopkeepers on the islands are now sitting outside of their shops, cowering in fear because of what's going on. There's this terrible, war is declared by the skeletons, and they're all offering you a shop discount and all this other stuff. But anyway, you follow the breadcrumbs, you talk to the right people, and it leads you on this quest around the world, finding these journals and notebooks and filling in pieces of the story. I will say I'm not that impressed yet. This worked out similarly to the way The Hungering Deep was structured. This one's bigger, and the story is much more intricate and interesting, and the payoff at the end of the story is much better than The Hungering Deep's. But I'm not that much of a fan of the gameplay loop of go to location, talk to person, find a hint at the next location, go there, read a journal, go to the next spot, read it. You know what I mean? It's just sail across the map, talk to somebody, or read a thing. Sail across the map, talk to somebody, or read a thing. And there's not a lot of real puzzle solving involved. There's not a lot of challenge involved. And I think that they could do better than that. I think that they probably will do better than that with Forsaken Shores and upcoming events because they have more time put into it. Like I said, Curse Sales was more than double the dev time as Hungering Deep, but Forsaken Shores is going to be like 7 weeks more on top of that, like 23 weeks or so of total dev time behind that, and then which is just like more than 3 times as much dev time as the Hungering Deep had behind it. So I'm hoping we start to see more involved gameplay behind the stories instead of just this loop of sailing to location to location.
Yeah, I liked it in Hungering Deep because it was the first time, it was novel, and I also felt like there was more to it, like the whole you've got to keep Merrick's drumbeat going from Sharkbait Cove to the site of the Hungering One battle all the way across the map. Like that was intense. That was something that felt like direct correlation. This felt more like a fetch quest. It felt less novel, and it felt like there was less one-to-one leading into the battle itself. Like once you get the sails, it culminates with you getting the sails that you need to. I guess do you even really need them? You don't need them. Just
they're
for
a set of commendations. So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
you're what's different between this and Hungering Deep is, like Hyle said, um, you do this kind of fetch quest like story, and once you do, you're rewarded with the drum that you need in order to summon the Hungering One, right? Uh, so in that way, the Hungering Deep campaign, you could not finish it. You could not engage with the Hungering One unless you had already done the story. Um, with the Cursed Sails, they separated the two out. They said you can talk to people on the outpost, and you can read the banner, and they'll tell you there's a skeleton ship battle going on, and you need to defend the outpost. And if you want to, you can go right there and engage in a skeleton battle right now. You don't have to do anything beforehand in order to unlock the ability to engage in the skeleton battles, which is what Hungering Deep did. But if you talk to people and listen closely, you're going to realize that there's this story and there's these clues you can follow, and it's entirely optional now, which is a good thing. But like you said, it also kind of it divorces it from the skeleton battle in a way that kind of they don't feel so tied together very well. But it's entirely optional. You can follow these clues, solve the story, and the reward for doing so is these regional sails. You can put these sails on in each of the three regions. They've got a different color and emblem that represents that region. And kind of the story behind that is, well, now you're sailing into battle to defend that region, and all the ships in your alliance should be flying these sails that match, that say, we are defending the Shores of Plenty. We've got the Shores of Plenty sails on. And the only reward for doing that was there was a separate commendation that said that you'd get 20 doubloons in each of the three regions for doing that. But it wasn't necessary. It was really kind of a side quest more than it was part of the quest, part of the campaign.
And I'm glad it was there because, again, as somebody who appreciates lore and story, it was nice to have like the reason why, and not only that, but to have the character of Wanda, who has been there from the start of the game on Golden Sands Outpost. You know, there's been some complaint among, I guess, more long-time Rare fans that the shopkeepers don't have the personality that you would expect from a Rare game, and I don't think that's fair because I don't think they're supposed to. I think they're just supposed to be there. You know, it's not like the characters who are going to resonate are going to be characters like Flameheart who've yet to actually appear in the game, but like these
Salty the parrot. I think you know he's one of the most Rare like characters I can imagine. He's this kind of wisecracking skeleton parrot. His lines of dialogue are funny.
There was even a reference to Squawks, the
right.
Donkey Kong Country 2 animal buddy that he gives in dialogue. Not like, hey, you know Squawks, the egg shooting parrot, but who holds a flashlight, but it's a joke about Squawks. But anyway, yeah. So you've got Wanda who's just been there from the start. Suddenly, you develop this story around her and the dark side of Wanda and how Wanda goes down this dark path and ultimately becomes a Skelly captain. And that also ties into the Tales from the Sea of Thieves book. And you get a similar transformation that Flameheart went through. And it's actually the reason Wanda... Well, I mean, I think we're skirting around the actual story here. So Wanda partners with Salty, and it's established in-game that Salty was an early shopkeeper in the Sea of Thieves who then disappeared. And the reason they removed Salty from after the technical alpha and closed beta was because Salty didn't really fit the naming convention of what they were going for, because every shopkeeper in Sea of Thieves, their first name starts with the letter of their profession. So everybody who, say, operates the tavern has a T for the beginning of their name. People who operate the weapon shops have a W, like Wanda. Salty didn't really have a place in any of that, so Salty had to go. I like Salty because Salty looks exactly like my father-in-law, which I find very, very weird. But Salty, he was removed from the game, but in the lore of Sea of Thieves itself, he was an early shopkeeper in the Sea of Thieves before the March 20th launch date of the game itself, and then he disappeared. Well, he found a cannon from Flameheart's ship, and within the cannon were cursed cannonballs. And Wanda gets this idea. What if we sell these cannonballs? Like, what if we mass produce them and we sell them? And what she and Salty don't realize is that this cannon is cursed. These cannonballs are cursed. Dealing with these cursed artifacts, especially the cannon, is having an effect on them. It's slowly transforming them into skellies. Wait, how did Salty become a parrot again?
Wanda realizes that tampering and experimenting with the cannon is causing side effects and explosive curses. They're, and she says, well, she's going to kind of do it one more time with one more really big burst. But maybe she'll use Salty to absorb the blast. She's very sociopathic in this way. She's very abusive of Salty and taking advantage of him. But she uses Salty to absorb this blast of this curse. And I guess as a result, her getting some of the curse is what turns her into a skeleton. But him absorbing this big dose of curse turned him into a skeleton parrot. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why that's how it works, but that is just how it works.
Yeah. So anyway, Salty becomes a bird, but a dead bird, and then and you got to get a Monty Python joke in there somewhere, of course. And then Wanda disappears, but the implication is she becomes a full-on Skelly. From dealing with all of this, and she takes on the name Warsmith instead of blacksmith. She's a warsmith or a weaponsmith. She's a warsmith now, and she's declaring war on the Outpost of the three regions because they would not sell her cursed cannonballs. They said, "Nope, we don't want any part of this. You sociopathic weirdo." And she was like, she loses like all sense of sanity. She declares war, and she aligns with the pre-existing Skelly captains that lurk about the islands, your Grog males and your whatnot, the ones that the Order of Souls always put bounties on. So these Skelly crews align with Wanda, and they build these Skelly ships. These Skelly armadas or fleets to then declare war on the three regions in the Outpost in particular. So the shopkeepers, they're like, nope. They board up their windows. They're like in a state of panic. It really is this apocalyptic vibe across all the Outposts in the game. And I say like these events, they don't upset the apple cart or the banana cart, if you were. They don't upset them too much, so gamers who don't care about any of this stuff just can play the game however they want to play it. But it does cast a pall over the Sea of Thieves that Hungering Deep did not. There is definitely this foreboding over the course of this, what ultimately became a month in Sea of Thieves, that I did very much appreciate. That if you can't really fundamentally alter the game too much, this was a nice compromise. Having the Outpost take on a different personality, a more sinister kind of despair almost, and have all of the shopkeepers kind of loitering about on the beaches, not in their shops, just like discounting everything half off, which was nice to like complete some clothing sets and whatnot. But it was also just this nice like end of the world sale, going out of business kind of spirit to it all. And I like that. I really did like the way it felt like cursed sales posed this existential threat to the way of life of the pirates in the Sea of Thieves. even if we know that's not going to be the case, it's exactly what these stories should do. These big threat level midnights, to use an Office phrase. I like
Yeah,
it's asking a lot for gamers to say, I'm going to fly my sails. I'm going to hoist my sails in support of the shores of plenty, because you don't really have this level of affinity so much for the three regions of the game world yet, where, yes, I need to protect the shores of plenty, I need to protect the wilds of all things. But throughout the course of the event, you definitely kind of started to feel that way, that I need to protect the three regions of the Sea of Thieves. I need to protect our way of life, and I'm doing that by taking on these Skelly armadas. So over the course of the event, you definitely did start to feel that way. So as far as setting the mood, as the table setting goes, I think Cursed Sails did an incredible job. My only complaint would be that the story campaign ultimately didn't have that resonance that Hungering Deep had.
Yeah, I think that one thing that Rare's done an excellent job of is, obviously, you know, their content updates are most likely built around gameplay first. They are thinking like, well, what are we going to add into this update? What do we have time to create? They've talked a lot in interviews about how they balance their updates to hit a number of areas, and big tools, little tools, AI threats, and hitting the different types of parts of the journey and parts of progression that you hit in a sailing session. And they break it all down very methodically, very economically. And I'm sure that when they're deciding like where they're going to put their dev time on their project, they're like, okay, we're going to have AI ships, and we're going to have the alliance system that needs to be finally finished, and then we're going to do this Brigantine ship. They aren't thinking about what the story is right away, but they've done an excellent job of, they come up with what is going to be contained in this event, and then how do we craft that into a compelling story. And I think Hungering Deep was it was jaw-dropping to me. The way they pulled it off was, it was just so simple but perfect. They've got a speaking trumpet, the flag system, the drum, and the shark. Those are really all the event added, four items. And they said, well, we've got the speaking trumpet and the flag. Those are kind of used for signaling intention and coordination. So let's make an event that requires coordination, requires crews to team up. We've got the shark and we've got the drum. Let's say that the drum is the thing that summons the shark. So we add in a shanty. You've got to carry the tune on the shanty. You've got to do it with another crew. So 5 total players means that you've got to have at least 2 crews. Boom, you've got an event, and they've now strung it into a campaign, and then they attach a story to it. They say, well, let's have an NPC who comes into this world and introduces these items, the speaking trumpet and the drum, and he's the one who tells you how to summon the Megalodon and puts you on your quest. Sea of Thieves doesn't just drop things in. They never add in content or tools or anything without that little bit of Rare, classic Rare window dressing. They never were going to make an event that just says you spawn in the game and you're immediately told through a UI prompt, sail to the northwest corner of the map to fight some skeleton ships, with no sort of plot behind it, no sort of exposition. And then the way they built up to it with the Wanda story ahead of time, teasing it week by week that something was coming, something is going to happen. That's what I like about Sea of Thieves and Rare games in general. It's a very, I don't want to say it's unique only to Rare, but it is the type of way of presenting content that I find compelling. I would find it kind of sort of, I don't know the word, but it would be off-putting to me if they just added stuff in to the world of Sea of Thieves, and the NPCs and the world around it just acted like they'd always been there.
Yeah. Sea of Thieves hews very closely to like a game I would dream about as a kid in the far off future, where imagine a game that changed over time. I remember reading in magazines about the 64 DD and what that could add to the N64, and the whole notion of games with internal clocks, and imagine a game that reflects the changing of the seasons. And so I would imagine, a game on Donkey Kong Island where, all of a sudden, Halloween is approaching and spooky things start happening. And that would excite me. And of course, we never got anything like that from Nintendo. And they did add internal clock to the GameCube, but that promise never was fully realized. But Sea of Thieves is very much kind of like that game I would dream about, where it's an ever-evolving game world, and Rare doesn't just say, okay, now you have this. There's always a reason for this. You could even make a case for the Brigantine. The Brigantine was not necessarily connected to any of the story elements of Cursed Sails, but you could say that, they built this to better take on the Skelly crews, and that's why it's now existing.
Literally, it was a line of dialogue in the game. If you talk to the shipwright, you talk to the shipwright and they tell you one of the dialogue options. You say, "Hey, what's this Brigantine?" And they'll tell you specifically, like, "Hey, a new type of ship at your disposal to help you, maybe better help you take on these skeleton battles." It's just a throwaway line, and like it's very easy to miss, but everything is explained, and that I like a lot.
Yeah, Rare has done such a fantastic job with the lore of Sea of Thieves and consistently building the world and the legends and the myths and the mysteries. There is so much going on now, and especially if you take in all of the expanded universe stuff, which very much is canon, does count, and is being reflected in game. It's almost staggering, and I'm really starting to, if you'll pardon the phrase, get off on all of it. It's remarkable, and I love how Cursed Sails brought in elements of Flameheart, just like teasing Flameheart a bit more in game. Building to eventually Flameheart showing up is exciting, and now that we have AI ships, that really does open up the possibility of, how Flameheart will appear, what that will mean. It won't just be Flameheart's in a Skelly fort somewhere or on an island, or, he could be on a ship, or I don't even know, it's exciting. So while the story campaign didn't work for me as much as Hungering Deep did, because I did appreciate how it all built up and climaxed with that fight with the Hungering one. I still very much do appreciate the story here and what they did. I just hope they kind of change it up going forward, so it's not just read a journal, go to an island, talk to somebody, go here, do this, do that. I want something a bit different next time around.
Yeah. Well, I remember when the Hungering Deep came, and I thought it was great, but then I kind of reflected on the campaign of it, this story of it, and I thought it was a bit, simple, and, the novelty of it was fresh. But the actual, what you did was just sail to location, read a journal. Sail to location, read a journal. And that's a little boring. And I was reflecting on that thinking, well, there's 3 journals. You had to find these 3 journals. They should have, or they could have, worked that into the 3 types of quests that you normally do. So maybe one of the journals you had to find it by finding it, an X marks the spot on a map. And then one of the journals might be you have to fight a horde, a bounty of skeletons and kill the captain. And when you kill the captain, he drops a journal. And then I don't know how maybe you could work in it a merchant alliance some way, some type of way, but I don't know. Anyway, my point was, taking the story and actually incorporating it into the gameplay a little bit, having the story play out through real gameplay challenges and real utilizing the systems that are already in the game to progress that story instead of just placing it kind of at different locations on the map and giving you clues as to where to sail to.
Yeah, although at the same time, I do like that it does give you something different to do other than those three things.
Mm-hmm.
I like that there is something time limited and like, because I'm somebody who loves just exploring the world of Sea of Thieves. And so to be able to like go on this quest and you have to find this laboratory that Wanda set up. I do like that. I guess my thing is like I wish there was a way that it could be a bit more robust, because I started to see the seams a bit more with this story quest than I did with the Hungry Deep, again, when it was novel and fresh. So I just hope going forward they do find a way to tweak it and maybe even do something that is a bit more encroaching upon the day-to-day existence in the game. Not so much that you can't, like, say, do a Gold Hoarder's voyage if you wanted, but something that's not just like find this thing hidden on this island out of the way. Maybe, I don't know, maybe have something like where you don't have to just go to these remote places on these islands. Maybe that's something that's a bit more involved anywhere you are in the game world. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. But all in all, like even if I was growing tired of the story campaign in Cursed Sails, it wasn't a deal breaker for me, because it did set up the actual battles itself. It told the tale it needed to tell for the battles, and the battles were the heart of this event. And so fundamentally, there are 3 a week, or there were 3 a week. One in the Shores of Plenty, one in the Ancient Isles, one in the Wilds. Those would change on a week-to-week basis with what the cursed cannonballs they would use would be. And additionally, like you said, you would have 4 hours essentially to find a crew, to stock up on supplies, because God knows you would need supplies, and ultimately go to the coordinates, which are always near the Devil's Shroud on the edge of the map. Again, they're always kind of in an out-of-the-way setting. I am going to be looking forward to having Skelly battles that are less remote and less with the always worry about sailing off the edge of the map into the Shroud. But you went to these places on these 4-hour intervals, which means you would have to play at specific times of the day, which not everybody liked. But I think they were kind of fair about it, because it wasn't like you can only do this battle from midnight to 8 a.m. Eastern time. That would be completely illogical and unfair to people who, say, work the night shift or have to sleep, But having it be on this like scaling time scale of every 4 hours meant you could take it on either day or night. And within a week's time, you should always be able to find a time that worked for you.
Well, the other thing was, so say, I don't know, say Ancient Isles was between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., and also consequently it would be between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. Maybe that time just doesn't work for you ever in the a.m. or the p.m. What they also did was every week in the 3 weeks, they rotated which region corresponded to which time slot. So if in week 1 you're busy between 4 and 8 a.m. and p.m. and you could never hit the Ancient Isles, in week 2 that time slot might be the Wilds, and now the Ancient Isles is 4 hours earlier. It's between 12 and 4.
Right.
And now maybe you have the time. And so what that would do is you might still, based on your schedule, you might be locked out of hitting every crew every week, but it did allow you, if you only had one time frame to play ever, if you only could play between 4 and 8 p.m. In the evenings, what region corresponded to that time would change every week, so you at least could hit every region once.
which was
That
really
would
good
get
for which is really
right.
good for our friends in prison who, they only get so much time in the rec room, a set time per week. So therefore, they wouldn't get all the commendations, but they would definitely be able to do all 3 battles.
Right, which would get them all the cosmetics. I know a lot of people really didn't like this system with tying it into real time, and Rare has since come out and said outright that they will not in future events. They've taken the feedback on for future events. They will not be doing content that is timed to a specific time of real life day. And they also said they wouldn't do stuff that's timed to a specific week out of a multi-week event. And that kind of, I feel like doing it week to week was fine, because I think that changing up the crews week to week was important for the structure of their event, because it meant that you could not earn every doubloon in week 1 even if you wanted to. You had to come back in week 2 to get some more doubloons because there was new crews, and then you had to come back in week 3 to get more doubloons. And so I think it's very important. There's some players out there with the time and the desire to marathon through this stuff, and they get it done in 1 day or 2 days. And it's a 3-week long event, and now they've got nothing to do for 3 weeks. And that same player is not going to quit playing. They're going to keep playing, and they're probably going to their presence on a server, even if they're not actively griefing people, they're taking away one spot on the server that could have been another player that wanted to help you.
Yeah.
There's only 6 ships on a server, and every ship on the server that is choosing not to engage in the event makes it that much harder for you to find crews to ally up with. So I thought it was good that they staggered the doubloons week to week and forced you to come back in at least 3 different sessions over 3 weeks if you wanted every doubloon. But we'll see. We'll see how they adapt this to future events and how they take the feedback in and structure their stuff. Because Cursed Sails was really based on feedback for Hungering Deep and response to that, but they're gonna take feedback from this too and continue to tweak it.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, and unfortunately, you're not going to please 100% of the people out there. You just got to please the most people, and I liked, honestly, the way Cursed Sails was structured. I didn't think I would, and I was a little on the fence about the whole, like, you have times to do it. But I think by the end of week 3, I definitely, like, got the hang of it, and it was kind of nice to, we would, like, hit up one battle and, like, do 2 in a row on, like, opposite ends of, like, the hours. So we would do the first battle near the end of a 4-hour cycle, and then hit the second battle near the beginning of the 4-hour cycle, and then we'd just take a break and come back later that night to do the third battle. And that's how we would do the Stream of Thieves for the event. And yeah, I like that. It was an adjustment, and it took a while to get used to that style of playing the game. But it kept me coming back. It kept it fresh. It kept it exciting. It gave me something to look forward to, and it definitely made me accommodate my schedule for Sea of Thieves. And I didn't necessarily mind doing that. I would have minded if I were, like, laid up in the hospital during the course of Cursed Sails, but barring any calamities, I was fine with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've pretty well covered what was in the Cursed Sails, what was, the structure of it, or how. I don't know how much we've touched on. If we want to just talk about, just in general summary, how we felt about it, compared to Hungering Deep, or just in general. I mean, this is definitely the biggest event that's ever happened in Sea of Thieves. You know what I mean? That, bar none. It's been a month-long thing, and none of us expected it to be that. How would you say? I'm just curious. Like, how did you love it? 10 out of 10. Did you have any issues with it that you wanted changed? You know what I mean?
I loved it. I did love it. Did I like it as much as Hungering Deep? Yes and no. I liked aspects of it way more than Hungering Deep. I think Hungering Deep was ultimately, it was more compact, and therefore it could be more impactful because of that. I don't necessarily want every event to be as compact as Hungering Deep, though. So I applaud how huge and sprawling Curse Sales was. And I definitely had. I think the actual Skelly battles were a lot more fun than the battle with the Hungering one. It's just that the total package of the Hungering Deep, ultimately, I think it all complemented each other better than, say, the story campaign and the battles complement each other in Cursed Sails. So I can't really decide whether or not I liked Cursed Sails better or I liked Hungering Deep better. I think there are aspects I liked better of each. So I'll say 8 out of 10 for Cursed Sails. Again, room for improvement, but what this fundamentally adds to the game and what it will mean for the game later on, I think just so far outpaces Hungering Deep that I think ultimately Cursed Sails will be the more worthwhile experience, the more worthwhile event. And the Skelly battles were just incredibly fun. They got me good at doing things that were out of my comfort zone beforehand. And like, if you would have told me that by the end of Cursed Sails, I would just naturally be inclined to jump on these enemy ships and try to be a saboteur, I would have raised my eyebrow at you, because I would have never necessarily, unless had to do it, I would have never jumped on an enemy ship prior to this, human controlled or otherwise. And it got me out of my comfort zone, which I think these events excel at, is getting you out of your comfort zone. Hungering Deep was the first time you really had to engage with other crews in a positive way, force you to make alliances. Cursed Sails forces you to develop a skill set at these naval battles and the hand-to-hand combat as well. It makes you evolve as a better player in Sea of Thieves, and Cursed Sails really did that for me, and I'm appreciative of that. And I was never, I said at the beginning of this episode that there was a level of fatigue with Cursed Sails by the end of it. I think it's just because I was ready to move on by the end of the third week. But when I actually sat down to play it, I was never bored with it. I was never saying, okay, this is getting a bit repetitive. It was always exciting to come back to. So while I want the game to kind of move on from this, I was never actually tired when I actually played it. And I think other people in the community and on the staff felt the same way. I know Cameron and Shane Marchus, they were like, we're kind of done with it this week. But then they were watching the streams if they weren't a part of it, and they were getting like revved up again. They were getting energized and excited. So it definitely had this effect of, I think it wore all of us out, because we'd be playing for 12 hours a day, but we would then just want to come right back to it.
Yeah, I think that the difference with the Hungering Deep and the Cursed Sails is so interesting, because Hungering Deep is, like you said, it's kind of it's a singular afternoon activity. You go through a story and it caps off with this epic fight, and there's this cool camaraderie with another ship that you had to team up with, which we hadn't really had that experience so much before that. And all of that is just exciting and new, and you can do it in about 3 hours or maybe 8 if just depending on your circumstance. And that's cool. It's like this one-time adventure, and then it's done. Cursed Sails naturally wanted to structure it differently, structure it more for the type of game that Sea of Thieves is, because Sea of Thieves is not really a game about one-time, one-and-done adventures. It's this game about kind of repetitive quests, not repetitive in a derogatory sense, but but repeatable quests, grindable, gathering of treasure and completing of these tasks. And the game doesn't have anything in it that's just like, there's just this one-time quest you can only do once. No, everything is repeatable, everything is grindable, and there's fun in that, in the variables that you can encounter from time to time. And I think that Cursed Sails tried to structure itself more like that. It's a grindable thing. It's repeatable. There's variables in place of who you encounter as your allies and what kind of, how it plays out. And then you've got the different types of cannonballs, and those are variable. But it naturally is going to have a different feel than that one and done grand adventure compared to something that you have to do 9 times in 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And anything that is grindable, even if it's fun, you're going to eventually be like, okay, I had fun with that. I'm kind of looking forward to moving on to a new thing to do. And that's great, because when Cursed Sails is done, those skeleton battles will still be there as an emergent occasional opportunity. And you might say, 3 weeks from now, you're like, hey, there's this skeleton battle cloud is up. I'm really itching to get into a naval battle right now. I haven't done that in a month or whatever. And you can go do it, but it won't be this compulsion to do it over and over for 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Where that kind of wore us out. But like you said, I say it wore us out. I say it kind of out. I mean, I don't think it outstayed its welcome so much as we're ready to move on, but we never did it and felt like we weren't having fun or we were doing it just out of an obligation.
Yeah, there's always this sense of accomplishment and exuberance when you ultimately were the victor in one of these battles, and I never lost that. So it's weird, because I've never had an experience like Cursed Sails in a game in my gaming career before. So it's a bit hard to process it. It's just this weird two sides of the same coin, where at the same time it's like, okay, yes, this is our 9th battle over 3 weeks. Oh my god! And you played much more than that, Jeff.
I won 18 battles.
But at the same time, it was a blast, and I would happily sit down and do 3 more this weekend if that was the case. So I don't know. Like I loved it. I'm not walking away from it like I did with The Hungering Deep, where I was like, that was one of the most magical experiences I've ever had as a gamer. That made me feel like a kid again. This was more of a sustained joy, rather than this euphoric like burst, this orgasm. To go back to my analogy, this was more this like low level bliss throughout 3 weeks.
Yeah,
so
it's a difference between the sort of one really great adventure that you can never repeat, or a very fun activity that maybe doesn't reach that same high of like, well, it's a great, cool adventure, but it's a great fun activity that is repeatable as many times as you want and fun every time.
And look, like the battles themselves, I did appreciate that they were different each time. If you did, each one of the 9, there was really quick. There was the crew of the Cursed Helm, which I believe that was the one that took control of the ship wheel.
Yeah, it would limit your ability to steer. You would be able to steer a little to the left, a little to the right, but it would kind of lock your wheel in that place.
So if your ship got hit by this cursed cannonball, then you lost control of the wheel, which when you're right on the edge of the map in the Devil's Shroud and you've got to stay in the thick of this battle, or else the ships will go back under the waves or despawn, to use the technical vernacular, then that's a problem. You had the crew of the Foul Grog, which made your pirates drunk, which meant you could still like go about your business. It was just much harder. Crew of the Dancing Demon, which made your crew dance, which brought everything to a halt, and meant that if your ship was, say, taking on water, Well, tough titties, my friend. You can't really do much about it. You just have to hope it doesn't take on enough water that you can't salvage it when you stop dancing. Crew of the Fool's Stride. What was the Fool's Stride?
Broken leg.
Broken leg, yes. So, like the drunken one, except this time it mimicked the fall damage that you get when you fall from a very high height, and then you kind of sprain your ankles, or in this case break your legs, and so your controller's rumbling, you're kind of waddling about, so again you're just kind of moving in slow-mo. Crew of the Treacherous Bounty, which was what was that?
It locked your resource barrels.
Yes, that was a pain in the ass. I remember that one being very, very stress-inducing because, again, if your ship is taking on water, or if you need to get to your cannonballs, you can't really do much about it except if your ship's taking on water, all you can do is bail, until the barrels are decursed, until the curse wears off, and then you can get them. So a lot of this had to do with resource management, like making sure you had enough items on your pirate, or going into the battles, making sure you got enough items in the barrels. There was the Crew of the Enslaving Chain, which dropped your anchor, and that it was kind of like the ship's wheel in that it was a nuisance, a minor nuisance, but one that was not insurmountable. Crew of the Sandman's Revenge, that like the dancing one, this would put you to sleep. And so it just meant that for a brief period of time, your pirate couldn't do anything except nap on the ground. Crew of the Black Viper, which mimicked the effect of a snake bite or snake venom, which gave the poison kind of cloudiness over your vision. And then there was the Crew of the Siren's Gale, which raised your sails. So you kind of, you see like, okay, each one has a similar effect that negatively impacts your crew. All of them kind of have a counterpart from week to week. So really, all that really changed was kind of aesthetics, and some minor strategy, but I still did appreciate that they were all different, that they all felt different, that they all had a different effect and made you formulate a different strategy with your crew. That was exciting. And that kept the battles fresh, and it kept the event fresh and fun. And it really did make me grow as a player. And I am the more time, because it's been a week since I played this, the more time that extends between the end of the event for me and the present, the more I'm appreciative of, wow, I was really taken out of my comfort zone for that, and I'm no longer as meek and timid when playing Sea of Thieves. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that the different cursed cannonball types, and the other cool thing is that, so this event added those cursed cannonballs, and each battle was different, in the way that the gameplay played for it, but it also acts as sort of a showcase of each cannonball one at a time. And now, if you played through Cursed Cannonballs, now you know all the cannonball types that they've got and what they do, and it acted as sort of a showcase, almost a tutorial. Play through these battles, and you're going to learn what every cannonball does, because after Cursed Sails, what's coming this week is they're going to take those Cursed Cannonballs, and they're going to bring them into the world, so that players can use them and encounter them and gather them and utilize them in combat against each other. And I really like the way that they've done that. So this AI skeleton ship battle, it's gonna give you an opportunity to engage in ship to ship combat that you might not be comfortable with. It's gonna give you all these techniques, and then it's gonna introduce you to each of these cursed cannonballs one at a time. Because now, going forward, those cursed cannonballs are going to be part of the game world, and they're going to impact player versus player combat forever. They're always going to be there, and you're going to have to know how to deal with them. You're going to have to know what the effects do and how to combat them, or all these stuff. So it's really it's a challenge, and it's a battle, but it's also, in a way, it's a tutorial and a showcase of upcoming content.
It's essentially a 3-week Spiral Mountain, and you're just fighting giant carrots for 3 weeks. But goddamn, do I love fighting some giant carrots. Okay, ultimately though, Sea of Thieves is now more than 5 months old as far as being a released game out in the public. I was going to say out in the wild, but that has connotations with Sea of Thieves. Out in the shores of plenty, out in the ancient isles, out in the Devil's Roar, we'll soon say. But when the game came out, there was criticism and complaints of, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to this game. There's 3 types of voyages, and that's it. It's boring. Boring. That wasn't necessarily true, but that's the impression people got. No Man's Sea. 5 months in, Rare has added a plethora of stuff, and it's made the experience so much more varied and nuanced than it was before. Jeff, do you think that those critics who tried Sea of Thieves when it came out and found it wasn't for them, do you think they would be more suitably impressed if they picked up the game today?
Well, I think yes and no. I think if you jump into the game right now for your first time and you had not already picked up any sort of narrative about, what the popular opinion on the game is, if you had just come in completely blind, like a newborn baby, but able to play games and think, I think you'd be impressed. I don't think you would necessarily think the game is finished yet. And that's the beauty of Sea of Thieves, is that it's never finished. But I think that you would view the game not like an empty shell of what it's supposed to be, but you would view the game as like it is a game of exciting potential. You would approach it from probably a more positive standpoint. You'd say like, wow, this game is awesome, and they're adding all this new stuff, and they're going to keep adding new stuff, and that's exciting because the game is nothing but potential. Whereas when the game launched, people complained there was nothing to it, and they didn't look at it as like, well, look at how much potential this game has. Like, they're going to add all this stuff. Nobody had that faith. Nobody had that sort of perspective. It was more like, I can't believe you're charging $60 for this. This is a joke. And I think that the way they structured their development cycle, they split into 3 teams, and then they've since added a 4th team. Those teams are all working on content at the same time and staggering the releases out so that every couple months we've got a major content update, and every 2 weeks we've got these smaller. Well, every week we've got an update, and their quality of life and bug fixes and these other stuff. And every 2 weeks we've got a new adventure to go on with a new, not just bug fixes and tweaks, but a new gameplay change with challenges built around that change. Every 2 weeks we've got that. And then every couple months you've got a major content update with a ton of new gameplay stuff and a story built around it and a bunch of challenges to take on with really exciting changes to the game world. I think that as harsh as people were on the game at launch, this is one of the most exciting games to me that's currently on the market. Just in terms of the constant new content being added and the pace at which it's added.
I remember saying on our initial First Impressions episode earlier this season that, the stuff you're complaining about that's absent, it's clearly coming. Like, this is going to be a game that grows over time. I think I've been validated as far as that goes, because Hungering Deep, not just Hungering Deep incurs sales, but as you mentioned, the weekly updates, the Build Rat adventures, which have added so much to the game as far as just stuff to do, and just the possibilities when a new environment is going to be added to the game in the coming weeks. I mean, oh my god, a 4th region. all new landscape. Like that's the stuff. Like Sea of Thieves, you can't view it as this complete package that exists in March 20th, and there might be some updates here or there. The Sea of Thieves is an ever evolving experience, and it, like you said, it is one of the most exciting games I've ever had in my library or in my life. It's already something I consider to be my second favorite game of all time, right underneath Donkey Kong Country 2. And I mean, it's just, I don't know, like Curse Sales comes along and adds so much more to the game. I was already having so much fun with the game, but now there's all sorts of new strategy and, as I mentioned before, nuance to it that wasn't there before. The whole alliance system, so many different ways to play the game that's fundamentally still built on the same structure that existed on March 20th. But just the slow incremental building upon that excellent framework that existed. I mean, oh my God, like Sea of Thieves is just this thing that keeps on rewarding me for having faith in it to begin with.
Yeah, I think that when the game first launched, you've got these 3 voyage types, these 3 trading companies, and that gameplay loop of you go do a quest, finish it, repeat it, in and of itself can be boring, especially if you do it 1,000 times. It can be boring. It can be exciting. And I think that where the excitement comes in and what Sea of Thieves tries to build itself around is that introduction, that push out the door, that first goal of, well, here's a map with an X on it, go to that location. That is really just to get you out the door so that you're encountering other stuff. You're encountering other players. You might team up. You might fight. You might, you might sneak aboard their ship and hide for an hour, and it's going to be the funniest thing ever. And you're like just hiding in the hull of their ship, eating their bananas or something, or you pop out at the last minute playing, some funny song over the microphone. I don't know. All kinds of funny or interesting or heart-racing moments come about. But people were right to complain that the core loop of gameplay was repetitive and kind of shallow. And I think up to now, they've completely undone those feelings for me because they've replaced regular everyday voyaging with build rat adventures. You're constantly doing something new every time you log in. There's a new challenge to go on. And sometimes it ties into voyaging, and sometimes it is the voyage itself. Sometimes that's what you want to do for your session is focus on this adventure. And that has replaced that shallow core gameplay loop. But they've also just constantly added in all these new, more ways to spice up that unpredictable factor, the way you interact with players, the things that can happen along your route. That is constantly changing and being added on. And I think that they still need to revisit those core voyage lines. I think those can be improved on. I know they are tweaking Merchant Alliance for the Forsaken Shores update coming in September. And that is a much needed change because it's the one that most people agree needs the most work. But the amount of stuff you can do outside of those voyages, even if you do believe those voyages are shallow, the amount of stuff you can do, the amount of stuff you can encounter, going into a fleet of alliances against some skeleton ships is going to be a game-changing experience for me going forward. Once that becomes just a part of the world, that is going to be the way you hook players. That's going to be the thing you show your friend who is skeptical of the game. You say, here, watch me do this skeleton ship battle with these 3 other ships in an alliance, and he'll want to go play the game right now. He'll want to buy it, or he'll want to get on Game Pass and try it out, because those are the types of experiences that that made the game exciting in the first place, but they were fewer and farther between. And I think that as they move forward, all the stuff they're adding, the alliance system, all these other ways to interact with each other, they're better facilitating those exciting moments. They're making the exciting moments less infrequent, and and making it so that those are just the norm, the excitement and the variables and the interactions. Those aren't the rarity that distracts you from a gold hoarder voyage. Those are the norm. Those are the common occurrence, and they're always different because of the amount of variables in place. I think that's what they're really doing a good job of. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we know Forsaken Shores will launch on September 19th, Talk Like a Pirate Day. So, Jeff, you're the one who's up on this. What do we know so far about Forsaken Shores? What's coming next in Sea of Thieves?
So Forsaken Shores, it's adding a new region, the Devil's Roar, which I had thought they said it would be on the west side of the map, but I think they just said on a stream yesterday that it's going to be on the east side of the map, between the Ancient Isles and the Wild. So I don't know, but basically it's going to expand the map. The Devil's Shroud is going to recede, and the map will get bigger by one third. They said that the region is going to be as big as a normal sized region. There's going to be, I think, 14 islands in it, and most of them are large sized islands. So some really big, exciting islands to explore. There'll be an outpost. What makes this new region exciting is that it has a theme. The Devil's Roar is a volcanic region with a lot of geological activity and a very tumultuous sort of region. So basically, the way it's going to work is you're going to always spawn when you start in the game. You're going to spawn in one of the three normal regions that we've always had. The Devil's Roar is going to be out there, but you will never spawn into that from the start. You have to make the conscious choice to sail into there, and the reason being that going there is dangerous. It's got these volcanoes that are going to, potentially erupt and rain rock and fire down. They've got geysers that will blow you up into the air and maybe break your legs when you fall down, or the waters around the islands become superheated. So if you swim in there, you're gonna get burnt or damaged and maybe die. All of these factors, earthquakes and volcanic, make voyaging more difficult in the Devil's Roar. But there's going to be better reward in the Devil's Roar. So you're going to go in the regular side of the world and stock up and get all the supplies you need, because it's a dangerous area. You're going to need supplies. And then you go into the Devil's Roar for some really exciting volcano-themed voyaging. Alongside that, they're adding in rowboats. And rowboats are going to be encounterable in like an emergent item that you encounter in the world. They don't just come automatically, but you can find them the same way you would find a gunpowder barrel lying around. You might find a rowboat washed up on a shore, and you can then dock it to the rear of your ship and take it with you. Rowboats are going to give you the opportunity to park your ship far away to keep it kind of out of harm's way. If a volcano is going to erupt and damage your ship, you're going to park out of harm's way, rowboat into shore, and then you can load the rowboat up with all the treasure you find and row back to your boat. And that's going to open up so many more opportunities. You can imagine the different scenarios a rowboat can be used in. You might load a rowboat up with gunpowder and just row out to another ship and blow them up. Or you might, if your ship is sinking but you've got a rowboat, maybe let's just get all the treasure out of the water and put it on the rowboat, and we'll start sailing our ship back here. But we've saved the treasure on the rowboat, and we'll row to you and meet you halfway or whatever. We'll just keep the treasure afloat on the rowboat. Things like that. Rowboats are going to change things up. The new region with the new way of interacting with the world, the islands are the threat, basically. That's going to change up the way you voyage. And then they're changing up merchant voyages. They're adding in a new type of merchant voyage called a cargo run, where you have to deliver a cargo from one outpost to another. And there's special types of cargoes that are of cargo that is going to require you to interact with it a certain way. So you've got plants and these special plants that need to be delivered, but the plants have to stay watered So you actually have to fill the bottom of your ship with a little bit of water to keep the plants wet. But of course, filling your ship with water is kind of a risky affair if you get attacked by another ship and you're already half full of water. Then you've got these exotic cloths that need to be delivered as a cargo, and those can't get wet. If they get wet, they decrease in value. So if you keep them on the top of your ship and you sail into a storm, you're going to ruin the cloth and lose all its value. So you got to be careful where you store them. Then you've got these bottles of rum that those will be damaged and lose value if they get hit or if they get shaken. So you want to like kind of be careful the way you store them and not get into any fights and take care of these bottles of rum. So you've got all these types of cargo you're delivering, and you kind of have to take care of them almost the way you would take care of animals and pigs and stuff. But instead of going out on a sort of a fetch quest to catch a chicken, you're being given the cargo at location A and deliver it right to location B. It's kind of streamlining it a little bit and adding a little different tweak on the formula for the merchant voyages. That's all we know of so far. But we really don't know what is the story going to be, what is going to be the campaign, what are the commendations going to be, what other secrets are they hiding out on us? Because even when Cursed Sails was unveiled at E3, they kind of told us all the major stuff that was coming: the Brigantine ship, AI ships, skeleton ships, and the Cursed Cannonballs. Even back then, they never told us they were going to do the Alliance system, and the Alliance system might have been one of the biggest things that event added. So we don't yet know what we don't know. But like I said before, the Forsaken Shores had 3 times as much dev time behind it than the Hungering Deep. An extra 7 weeks of dev time, longer than the Cursed Sails. So you can expect this to be a substantial update. They're probably going to see something involved with Pirate Legends, which is needing an update. The Pirate Legend voyage track and Athena's Fortune is ripe for an update now that more and more players are hitting that. They're going to have to address progression for those players that have already maxed everything out. I wouldn't be surprised to see anything like that show up, and new types of cosmetics, new sets of cosmetics, and new figureheads and all this other good stuff. I'm excited, and it's also pretty exciting to me that it's coming so quick after Cursed Sails. Cursed Sails technically ends tomorrow morning, and it's a lot less than a month away, and we'll have the Forsaken Shores, which is a huge change from the gap between Hungering Deep and Cursed Sails, which was 8 weeks. That was a long gap. This is only going to be like 3 weeks. So yeah, and then the cool part is that once Forsaken Shores is done, the Hungering Deep team, which it finished the Hungering Deep, they jumped in the back of the line, so they've been working on something for all of this time that is going to come next. The train really never stops rolling with this game, and so just like a month after Forsaken Shores, we might see what the Hungering Deep team's been working on, and we have hints and teases at what that might be, and that'll be exciting. So that's the great part about this is constant new stuff to do, but not just stuff to do, but that stuff is just permanently enriching the experience going forward.
Yeah, that's I think unusual, especially as a Rare fan, to have that level of uncertainty, to not know what the game is going to look like 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line. And that's kind of thrilling and exhilarating that, yes, I know basically what the game is going to be, but at the same time, the game is going to probably play completely differently by then. So it really is this beautiful, beautiful butterfly continually emerging from its pupae, and then it flutters its beautiful wings, and then it goes back in the pupae, and then it comes out, and it's got 3 wings and 4 wings and 5 wings, and I don't know where I'm going with this, Jeff. I like Sea of Thieves. It's a good game. It's a good game, and Cursed Sails was a good event, and you guys and gals need to check out our YouTube channel, because we'll be getting up all 3 weeks of Cursed Sails as our Stream of Thieves archives go up eventually. and there are going to be some hefty streams. I mean, probably the upper limits of what YouTube will allow as far as upload times go. But I will gladly re-experience this the last month of my life by rewatching these, because I'm glad we archived them the way we do, because they are moments in time, but I'm glad we can go back and savor the magical moments that were I guess fighting some skeletons on a ship, because the one shopkeep got upset at the levels of capitalism on the islands wouldn't allow her to sell evil balls. I guess that's the plot. Okay. So final thoughts, Jeff. Final thoughts on Cursed Sails.
Final thoughts. I think that it is the biggest, most exciting thing to happen in Sea of Thieves yet, bar none. And it does an incredible job of addressing feedback and evolving on the premise of things that have come before it to create a compelling experience that satisfies different people's needs. But it still left a little room for improvement, but it left me confident that they will rise to that any failure that they make along the way, any misstep, is so quickly addressed, and any concern so quickly, relaxed that I just always feel like the next one is going to be even better. And so far that's been true. So I'm excited. I thought Cursed Sails was the most fun I've had in Sea of Thieves yet, and I've been playing the game for years now, as you have, for even longer. And this is the most fun I've had playing Sea of Thieves, and I'm just even nothing but excitement for what is yet to come.
I actually hate it, because they call it Cursed Sails, Jeff. They call it Cursed Sails, but only 1 out of the 9 battles cursed your sails. The name was completely misleading.
So it should have been called Cursed Ships or Cursed Balls.
Naughty Balls.
Better luck next time.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.